Hello, this is Mr. Lujan. We're going to be working on developing charts today with Excel. So first off, we're going to highlight the text that we want to work with, our data here in our spreadsheet. And we're going to highlight A4 all the way down to D7. For you, might be a bit different. Just make sure you're highlighting the titles along with the data below it. To insert a pie chart, which will be the first chart that we use today, we're going to go over to the Insert tab. And notice how I have a row of different style of charts down by the chart section. I'm going to go over and hover above pie chart and click on the drop down menu, and you'll see various styles. We're going to choose our 3D one with separate pieces. Once you have clicked on it, you'll see that the pie chart will appear. We're going to go ahead and click it below so it's easier to work off of. If there are sections that I want to change, I could easily come down here and format my changes on the pie chart, or I can come up here and format the changes within my table. For our first part, we're going to focus on formatting different styles and colors. I want to make sure that my entire chart is selected by clicking on the white space and making sure that nothing in between has these little markers showing that those are selected, because I am allowed to select every single one individually and even go deeper by clicking on the smaller sections. So I want to make sure everything is selected, and notice how I now have 3 different tabs on my chart tools. I have my design section, which I can change the design of my chart. I have the layout section. This will be more involved once I go into bar graphs and other styles of charts. Then I have my formatting section, which we're going to be working with right now. In order to change the background here, I'm going to go ahead and come over to Shape Fill. I'm going to choose a nice light color. We'll go with yellow. And you will notice that as I go through every color, it'll appear and preview my color before I click on it. So we're going to click on yellow. We're going to leave that on there. We're going to move on to the next one. Here, if I wanted to, I can change the outline on my box. And right now my weight is not thick enough. I'm going to go ahead and change it to 3 points so you guys will be able to see it much easier. And I can change the outline of the entire section. I'm going to stick with the original black. Shape effects will give it effects as well, but we're not going to focus too much on that today. Next up, as long as my entire section is selected, this is acting like a text box. So if I make formatting changes to this whole section, as long as my entire box is selected, everything inside will be formatted to those changes. If I move over to Text Fill and change it to a different color, notice how all my text will change to that similar style. I'm going to go with one that differentiates from the color yellow, and we're going to choose red. Now, along with the color fill or the text fill, I can also change the outline of each section. So now it gives a little outline to every text that I have within the box. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a black outline. But notice how my text down here is a bit too small, where we have Snickers, Reese's, Cups, and M&Ms. So now it just looks like it's entirely black. So be sure you use the correct sections for your text here. One thing that I forgot to mention, we're going to go ahead and go back to our gradient fill, or to our fill here, because we are going to add a gradient fill to our background. There's 2 ways to do that. We went and performed it one way with the shape fill. I can go down here and choose a different gradient. And notice how we have those changes. I have more gradient styles down here. I can also right click within it, format the chart area. And we could add different styles here. If I click on gradient fill, we can move here and perform tasks in a different ways by just double clicking, and that same chart will appear. In order to change the gradient fill, you have to make sure that gradient fill is selected. You have different styles within this sections here. We can change the angle of the gradient so we can have the gradient straight up and down or at an angle. And in order to change the colors, I have to choose one of these markers. If I choose a center one and choose a different color, you'll notice that the gradient will change. Now my center area is red and is moving up to whatever color I decide to put on here. I click on my fill. And let's try something completely different. Let's go for green. So now it's moving from green to red. And we can change the bottom one to, let's go something completely different again, blue. If I wanted to, I can take one of these markers off or continue adding more with the plus sign. Add gradient stop. But we're just going to go ahead and stop there for now and move on to our next section. Now when we're talking about formatting colors, formatting every section, one thing to remember is that these will all apply to all the different styles of charts that you'll be working with. So if I'm working with a bar graph and let's say I have a bar that I want to change colors, I can perform the same task that I will perform here to change these large sections here. If I want to change the background color, again, I can do the exact same thing, or I can just come up here and add a gradient fill or a solid fill. So for the next section, we're going to go ahead and change our legend. Remember that our legend on a chart or on a map will explain what's included in here. My legend happens to be here. I can click on it once and a box will appear around all the information. If I wanted to, I can drag it up, wait till my cursor appears here into that black cross, and I can drag it anywhere I want within this section as well. Also, if I wanted to change these colors here, I can click again and it'll select every section on its own. Let's go ahead and click on Snickers. I'm going to double click on that. Let's say I want to change the fill to yellow. It seems to differentiate from everything else. If I press close, Snickers section on my legend changes to yellow and my chart section changes to yellow as well. If I go to Reese's, double click on that, we can give it a gradient fill, and let's choose, give it a completely different style. I chose some sort of blue, purple, and what can I choose my last one to be? We'll go ahead and go with black. So notice how the same way I was able to change the background layout, I can also change the layout within my actual chart. If I wanted to add a picture, I can click on picture too, but we're not going to go over that yet. And let's keep our M&Ms green. I just want to make that green a bit brighter so it's a bit more visible. Now with our chart that we have created, let's go ahead and change our style. Be sure that you are under design for your chart tools. And on your tools section, we're going to move to the far left and we'll see one that says change chart type. Within that section, we're going to go ahead and click on columns because we're going to create a column chart. And if you hover your cursor without clicking over each section, notice that it will bring up the name of that style of chart. We're going to go ahead and stick with clustered column and click OK. So now we have a different style of chart. Notice how our design stayed the same. We still have the gradient background and our color stayed similarly the same. now we have 6th grade within our legend, 7th and 8th. Our bottom section are Snickers, Reese's Cups, and M&Ms, which are our titles from our table up here. And our information within our columns, we have our price. First things first, notice how we don't have our titles for each section. We're going to go ahead and insert our titles first. To insert our title, we're going to go ahead and click on Layout for your tab section. And if we go to our labels, we have chart titles, axis titles, legends, and so on, data labels, and data table. We're going to click on our chart title first and place a title above the chart. Since we're talking about candy bars and our title up here contains candy bars, we're going to use the same format. Candy bars. We are also going to go ahead and change our titles for our y-axis, so our vertical section here, and our horizontal section on our x-axis. In order to do that, we're going to go to our axis titles. First, I'm going to change my horizontal axis and click on title below axis. So now a little small section appears down here. Since we have our Snickers, Reese's Cups, and M&Ms, I'm going to go ahead and choose to title this Candy. I'm going to include a title on our vertical axis, and for this one we choose Rotated Title, and we will title this one Price. Now notice how our title is a little difficult to see, so let's go ahead and enlarge that. If I can get a hold of it. Well, let's go ahead and select it first. I'm going to go home, change the font size to 14. Let's do the same thing with our bottom section here. Notice how we have red on red here, so I want to change the color to white on both sections. So now we can see our titles much easier. Again, depending on the colors you use will be the color that you'll be using for your font. So now we have our titles for each section. We have our legend up to the next point, and we have our chart. Another fun thing that you can do with our titles here, and let's go ahead and select our price units. So it should select our numbers. In our numbers section, we're going to go ahead and change the display. And in order to do that, again, we can go up here and choose our tabs. We can double click or we can right click. And I accidentally did that both at the same time. And we'll be formatting our axis. I want to change the alignment of our numbers here, of our price units, and we're going to choose -25 under custom angles. Once you have clicked OK, you'll notice that it'll change the layout of how it's viewed. Gives it a slight angle to it. Now also notice how we lost some of our information. This means that our text was probably too large, so we're going to go ahead and change the size of that to something much smaller. Let's go ahead and choose probably a bit too small. But notice how my text is now all visible within there. Before we finish off with this lesson, one thing I want to mention is when you guys are printing your documents, notice how not everything appeared within my section. I only have my chart. So in order to have all your information print, included the tables up here, we want to make sure that nothing is selected. I'm going to go ahead and unselect my table and unselect my chart. Now if I go to File and Print, everything will appear. And it should all be ready to print. Make sure you guys are printing in one page before you do anything else. Always be sure to double check on your print preview just to make sure, even if you think you're doing things right, just like I thought and write that at that moment, it'll show you it's a safeguard. Thank you guys for your time.